Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
This is America's Voice Live.
And welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurley.
The pulse of the people.
We need somebody that's going to hear the people's voice.
The truth the mainstream won't touch.
This guy is, by definition, a globalist.
And the stories that matter.
Rav's own Ben Bergquam.
Right up over this hill, we got one cartel. I see him.
Live.
Breaking news right now here on Real America's Voice.
Unfiltered.
These people are domestic terrorists.
And unapologetic.
We're here to take a stand for God and country. Let's feel good, doesn't it?
America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurley. It is Friday, the 20th of June. Let's get to the day's top stories. And as always, thank you for spending time with us here on Real America's Voice. We do appreciate it. The Chinese Communist Party continues to be a threat to the United States on multiple fronts, from trying to manipulate elections to targeting American agriculture. They're trying everything they can to hurt this country. We'll be discussing that in detail today with Gordon G. Chang. Also, the left claims to be the party of peace, but their history is soaked in blood and violence. From the assassinations of multiple presidents to the recent murders in Minnesota, their legacy of violence spans centuries, and it's time we called it out. More on that coming up. And then later, the DNA testing company 23andMe has found itself in a lawsuit for allegedly selling customers' DNA. Shocked, aren't you? The lawsuit argues that the company failed to uphold the privacy clause and that customers were reasonably expected to believe that their data would never be auctioned off, but it was. I'll give you all the details and updates today, but first, we start here. Today marks 1 week since the beginning of the latest war between Israel and Iran, and today we continue to see missiles flying from both sides. It all started because Iran refused to heed President Trump's warning to sign a nuclear deal, saying that they would not and could not have a nuclear weapon. They kept pushing forward. Iran's refusal to sign a nuclear deal and continue their efforts prompted Israel to launch their Operation Rising Lion, targeting Iran's nuclear facilities to start with. President Trump has been weighing whether to attack Iran by striking its well-defended Fordow uranium enrichment facility, which is buried under a mountain and widely considered to be out of reach of most missiles, except America's GBU-57 bunker buster bombs that can penetrate 200 feet of concrete, reinforced concrete. The president said he'll decide within 2 weeks whether the U.S. military will get directly involved in the war, given the substantial chance for renewed negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program. Here with me to discuss this is a former advisor to the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a senior contributing editor at Jewish News Syndicate, Ruthie Bloom. Ruthie, thank you for being here today. Look, Iran's Prime Minister is meeting with European leaders in Geneva, Switzerland today, from the UK, Germany, and France and others in an effort to de-escalate this situation. What do you make of it? Where are we 1 week into this exchange between Iran and Israel?
You know, I really hate the word de-escalate when you're talking about good fighting evil. And the reason is that there would be an end to all of these wars that Iran started, and that includes its proxies in Gaza and Lebanon and Yemen. All they would have to do is stop fighting, stop attacking the Jewish state and, of course, in American interests and others around the world. The European instinct or DNA, you mentioned DNA before, to sort of capitulate as soon as they're under threat, has really gotten us into serious trouble. When I say us, I mean the West, I mean America, Israel, and that's what I make of it.
Yeah. President Trump is in New Jersey now at Bedminster, Ruthie, and he had said, I was fully convinced on Wednesday of this week that we would be involved, we, the United States, in some sort of a bombing effort against the Iranians by now. President Trump brought it right up to the brink. He's been in and out of the situation numerous times, but so far has not, if you will, pulled the trigger on going after Fordow or any of these other places. What do you think the president is considering at this point? Do we consider Iran to be honest when it comes to negotiating?
No, absolutely not. And I don't think that Trump believes for a second that Iran is a good faith negotiator. First of all, you can't negotiate with jihadists, certainly not with the head of the octopus, which is Iran. But what I believe is, and again, I have no inside knowledge about this, I believe that President Trump is, first of all, he's telling his base and the isolationists in his base that he is going to exhaust every diplomatic option before launching any strikes. That's number one. And number two, I believe that he is waiting to allow Israel to clear the path, so to speak, to make it easier to attack Fordo, because Israel has made incredible strides in Iran in this past week. So, it's like clearing away. I'll tell you, before Israel launched its ground invasion into Gaza after the October 7th massacre by Hamas, there was a whole preparation, about 3 weeks of preparatory strikes. And then the ground was cleared for the soldiers. In this case, I think that this is clearing the ground for an American airstrike.
So that's what, that's the question back and forth. Is Donald Trump playing a game, if you will, giving one indication when his plan is something different? Look, he was unequivocal. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, period. He has been clear about this, and you can go back and look at his record back to 2011. We found tape. So for 14, 15 years, he's been very clear about this, long before he ran for president. I don't think that he's going to give them 2 more weeks. I find that unlikely. It's what was said here over the last 24 hours, but I find that unlikely. What do you say?
He said within 2 weeks. That could be within 2 minutes, And I agree with you. I think that that President Trump is just waiting for the time to be right when he decides it is. And he's also, his message to the mullahs in Iran is, look, I'll make a deal with you. And the deal is you wave a white flag, we declare victory, and then we can talk.
No, absolutely true. So let me ask you this. China has now positioned 2 of its sophisticated high-tech destroyers near the action. It seems that they might be involved with guiding some of these missiles, the Iranian missiles, to their targets in Israel. The question is, what is the role of the Chinese here? What is the role of these? I mean, you've got China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, all on the same side, basically, right? What is the Chinese role here?
Well, listen, these are all malign actors, and they're joining forces against the West and against the Jewish state, against America. This is no surprise. Now, question is whether they're actually going to do something about it or not. And I think that there was so much fear on everybody's part over these years that if anybody struck Iran, the consequences would be dire. Certainly Israelis thought so. I mean, you have heard Israeli pundits saying that if Israel attacks Iran, there will be hundreds of thousands of dead Israelis. It hasn't happened. It isn't true. And part of the reason it isn't is that Israel took care of Hamas, killed most of its leaders. The same with Hezbollah in Lebanon, has been successfully targeting the Houthis every time the Houthis send a missile, taking care of all these Iranian proxies. And don't forget, one of the consequences of this was that the Assad regime in Syria fell. That wasn't Israel's doing specifically. It was a consequence of the Israeli victory in surrounding countries. And that's what I think.
Ask you this,
China is flexing its muscles, but I believe that Israel is going to emerge victorious.
I think you're probably right about that. But, China is always willing to help those that will undermine the West. And in this case, Israel and the United States by extension. Let me ask you this. You're in New York as we speak. And I watched the corporate media weigh in on this, MSNBC specifically. Played a clip here yesterday where they're screaming death to America in the streets of Tehran. But apparently death to America doesn't really mean death to America. It's just, they're misunderstood, basically, was the takeaway from it. It was embarrassing. And I watched the corporate media here in America do this again and again, apologize, basically, for Iran or for the regime or for the people that hate America. Does that bother you as much as it bothers me?
Oh, definitely. I'll tell you something. I'm so used to it. I've lived in Israel now for nearly 50 years. And the Israeli left has always tried to apologize for jihadists who say what they want to do, and they mean it. I think that the conservatives in Israel have always taken very seriously what Iran, what the Palestinians say. When an enemy says, I want to kill you and I'm going to, and for whatever reason, it could be in order to go to the 72 virgins in paradise. It could be to spread the Islamic caliphate around the Middle East and the globe. Whatever reason, when they say it, they mean it. And I think that there's something really sort of racist or about any groups who don't take them seriously, as though they say it, but they don't really mean it. We see they mean it.
Of course they mean it. It's embarrassing, some of the people that work in media, in not just the United States, but in Western countries in general, willing to apologize for the worst behavior, the worst conduct, the worst regimes, and then wag their finger at the American president or the White House. It is remarkable. Ruthie, I'll give you the last word.
Well, the last word is that I believe that President Trump is going to do the right thing, and not on Israel's behalf. I want to stress that again, on America's behalf. I know that President Trump is the most pro-Israel president that the White House has ever had, and I know he has Israel's back. Whether that means he will drop bunker busters on Fordo, I don't know. But I believe he will do what's in America's interest, and that's what MAGA means and America First means.
I would happen to agree with you. He'll do what's in America's best interest. Ruthie Bloom, greatly appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up after the break, the Chinese Communist Party continues to be a threat for the United States on multiple fronts, including the conflict between Iran and Israel. They're trying to manipulate elections. They're targeting American agriculture and so much more. We'll talk about it straight ahead on America's Voice Live. Welcome back to America's Voice Live. Glad you're here for the conversation. Look, we're watching all of these developments happen in real time. And I've been following at Gordon G. Chang, as you should as well, on your X account, because he details China's involvement. China's tentacles are involved in all of these things. In fact, he pointed out here a short while ago that there's Chinese ships sophisticated Chinese ships off the shore that are likely directing Iranian missiles. He joins me now. Gordon, glad to have you back on the program. This is an important conversation to have. As I look at the ships you were pointing out off the shore, China is involved in this war between Israel and Iran. Clearly, they have their fingers in this, don't they?
Well, they certainly do. And the Chinese has essentially made this war inevitable. And they did that over the course of decades by supplying just about everything that Iran needed for a nuclear device. They supplied the centrifuges and centrifuge technology through Pakistan. That's the AQ Khan black market ring. Plus, they also sold things directly to Iran. So Iran wouldn't have a nuclear weapon if it weren't for Beijing. And that means this crisis is resulting from actions that have been made by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, there are other ways that China has supported the Iranian regime, but that's the most important one.
Gordon, let's be clear about this. Let's be just blunt and honest. Beijing doesn't care a bit about Tehran. Not at all. They'll help them because they're a means to an end. And what I mean by that is quite simply this. They would love to see the United States and Iran in a confliction, in a war in the Middle East, because it drains down American power. And that really is the end goal for Beijing on everything, isn't it?
Well, yes, because Xi Jinping has made it clear that his ultimate goal is worldwide Chinese rule. That's not control. That's not domination. That's not exerting hegemony over, but it's worldwide Chinese rule. And to that end, China has been disrupting the international system with the wars in Ukraine, against Israel, India, Pakistan, the insurgencies across North Africa that look like wars. Xi Jinping has taken a page out of his hero Mao Zedong's playbook about trying to bring down the international system through chaos, because Mao believed that chaos would lead to eventual worldwide Chinese rule. We may think that that's ludicrous, but that's the way that Mao thought, and I believe that's the way Xi Jinping looks at the world as well.
Absolutely. All right, let me just put it this way. America looks, and Americans look at war as a binary choice. We're either at war or we're not. China doesn't look at it that way. Many shades of gray for China. We are at war with China whether we realize it or not. They're playing cards every single day, aren't they?
Yes, and they've been very explicit about this. In May 2019, People's Daily, which is the most authoritative publication in China, carried a landmark editorial that declared a, quote, people's war on us. That phrase has great resonance in Communist Party thought. As PLA Daily, which is the main propaganda organ of the Chinese military, said in 2023, that people's war means total war. And of course, China has a doctrine of unrestricted warfare. So they actually believe that war is a continuum. As you say, we see it as binary, one or the other. The Chinese see it as more of a spectrum.
Yeah, it's an ongoing effort for them. You know, and I want to bring your attention to something on that spectrum that I've been paying a lot of attention to. I know you've watched it as well, and that is China targeting agriculture here in America. This is important for a variety of reasons. At the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, several arrests recently involving Chinese national students bringing in fungus, enhanced fungus potentially that could damage corn, wheat, rice, beans, all of it. And that could lead to a collapse of the American food system. If that's not a war, I don't know what is.
Yes, those 3 Chinese nationals this month who were caught taking in fungus and other pathogens. Though that fungus, by the way, was probably genetically modified. And that means it was genetically modified to make it more dangerous to crops. So this was a weapon of mass destruction. And this looks like the preliminary stage of a biological weapons attack on America's farms and ranches. So we've got to be clear about the severity of this. And, you know, this is part of a broader program of undermining U.S. agriculture, because at least throughout this decade, we have seen Chinese attempts to plant invasive species into the United States. All of these seeds that are sent into our country unsolicited. We saw a lot of that in 2020 when Americans in all 50 states got seeds from China unsolicited, as well as this year when Temu, the online Chinese retailer, was sending seeds to Americans unsolicited. This is an attack on our farms and our ranches.
Well, one of the major seed producers for the United States farmland comes from China. They own the company. Wheat, corn, rice, you figure it out. It's easy to figure out. Let me just lay out a scenario for you here, Gordon. Is you've got the war going on in Iran. Here's a distraction. Iran and Israel over here. China's fussing with it some. But their real goal, if they can collapse the American agriculture system, that would collapse the value of farmland. Well, if you collapse the value of farmland, you create a bank panic. You create a problem with banks because solvency becomes an issue immediately. Then you have a bank failure. You have an economic crisis in America. China's on top. They've never fired a shot. Pretty remarkable series of events that could happen that way.
Yeah, as the son of a farmer, a Chinese farmer, I believe that American agriculture and American farms are the core of American society. So it's all those things that you talked about, Steve, but it's also the moral foundation of the United States. That's agriculture. It's not the cities. It's not the suburbs. It's our farms and our ranches.
Yeah, and so I look at what's happening with China funding Iran, giving them potentially technical information to guide their missiles, to create more chaos. The more chaos that happens there or in Ukraine or anywhere else on the planet, China looks at that as an opportunity to continue to undermine the United States. That's the play here. And whether Americans realize it or not, we are at war with China. I've known that for years. So have you. I think people need to be aware of it. They need to be awakened, if you will, to the Chinese menace, because it is a menace, because it's relentless. It never ends. It's a 500-year plan to control the planet because they're very patient. I'll give them that. Gordon, I'll give you the last word here. Lay it out however you want.
You know, the most important thing is that we've got Chinese agents, soldiers, operatives in our country in networks. And so do the Iranians, and probably the Russians as well. And as the number one federal priority, I hope that the border czar, Tom Holman, goes after and breaks up these networks, because they can bring down the United States. They'll attack our military bases. They'll attack our civilian infrastructure. They will kill Americans. We need to disrupt these networks immediately.
Are we up to the job? Is the CIA, is the FBI, our intelligence networks, are they up to the job? That's my last question for you, Gordon.
Got a one-word answer for that one, Steve. No. We are not thinking about this in the way that we should. We have a general understanding of what's China doing, but we are not applying specific policies right now and tactics to get the Chinese out of our country. Because if we don't do that, we very well could lose our country. This would be the first time since the War of 1812 that Americans have fought a foreign enemy on their own soil in a sustained battle. War of 1812.
Sobering. You can follow him on X at Gordon G. Chang. I advise you do that. If you want the up-to-date information, not hysteria, but the facts. And they're sobering, to say the least. Gordon Chang, always appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll take a break. I'll be right back. This is America's Voice Live. You learned something, didn't you? I'll be right back. Well, the left continues to claim they are the party of peace. However, like the old saying goes, actions speak louder than words. First, a recent example. The LA riots where Democrats and illegal aliens took to the streets to protest ICE and their deportation efforts. Only the protests weren't. They burned cars, destroyed property, looted stores, committed a plethora of other crimes. Pretty ugly, actually. Another great example is the shooting of 2 Minnesota state lawmakers to death. Their spouses shot as well. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband killed. State Senator John Hoffman and his wife survived the attack. One shot 8 times, one shot 9. Pretty remarkable. And now we see that you have violence in other places as well. Including our next guest who ran for the seat in New York 21. And he joins me now. Anthony, good to have you back on the program. You ran for the New York 21 and found that they wanted violence against you as well, didn't they? That seat is no longer up for grabs. But you say that the New York Conservative Party chair, Jared Kasser, came after you and threatened your life, didn't he?
I released a call, and he said, we intend to kill you. It's a bigger reason why we intend to kill you. He said, we're going to do everything in our power to destroy you. And this was just 3 days after I announced my interest in even getting involved in the political process. I had done everything I could to support the president. I put up the vote for Trump's sign. I endorsed the president to my 5 million customers, spent over $1.2 million on the election. Following the election, a guy named Roger Stone reached out and invited me to dinner and immediately started encouraging me to run for Congress. So I took that as a good sign. Roger gets in the corner of some of the best and the best there's ever been. And I said, geez, I'd like to have Roger in my corner. I'd like to work with Roger. So I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to run for Congress. A few days later, I get a call from the conservative chairman, who I thought would be kind and welcoming, and instead he was very hostile. I ended up recording the call due to his hostility. It was concerning the way he was talking. And next thing I know, he's saying, we intend to kill you. He said, it's a bigger reason why we intend to kill you. I said, a bigger reason? You already had a reason before we even had this call. And he said, we're going to do everything.
So is it rhetorical? I got to ask, Anthony, was it rhetorical? Or, do you think he was seriously threatening to kill you?
Well, he had every opportunity to talk in a sensible way. I never spoke to the person before. And I know if I spoke to a person like that, I'd get fired immediately as a CEO. I couldn't talk to people like that. And most people, if they called their neighbor and they said that, the cops would show up. In fact, I actually said that to a friend of mine. I said, if most people did that, the cops would show up. And my friend actually said, believe it or not, I got angry once. And I said that to somebody and the cops showed up at my house. So, that's not a way to talk to people, particularly people you've never talked to before, particularly not when you're a leader for a party that's losing. What Chairman Kasser needs to do is grow the party and start winning. He's been losing a lot, and he needs to grow the party. Lo and behold, a guy like me shows up. I own the largest printing company in the United States of America, largest privately owned printing company in the United States of America. I'm one of the top business people in New York State, and I decided to get active and try and help the conservatives and Republican Party succeed. And instead of inviting me in and discussing differences, if we even had any, I don't know what differences we even had, but instead of having
so why do you think the pushback? Why do you think the pushback? Why the threats?
The same reason that President Trump had the pushback when he first got involved. If everyone remembers, he had a tremendous pushback from the Republican Party from his own side. Everybody loves him now, but the Republican Party rebelled against him. The Democrats rebelled against him. The establishment rebelled against him at the national level because people don't like having their organization disrupted. And there's little micro establishments all throughout this country. We have one in New York. We have them all over the place. But New York's a state that's failing, so the establishment here has nothing to be proud of. They have nothing to be proud of at all. The state's going in a bad direction. We've lost 2 million people. The Conservative and Republican Party, they do nothing but lose elections for the most part. So they shouldn't be boxing out outsiders. They should be looking inwards and have a little bit of humility and realize they need help. I showed up wanting to help, and I ended up being favored by them.
Yeah, are you going to stay in politics, Anthony? Last question to you. Are you going to stay in politics? You're going to do it again? At least Stefanik stayed in New York 21, so it's not a seat that's available anymore, so that kind of became a moot point. But will you still be around?
Yeah, I want to stay active, helping make New York great again. We're going to see what happens with Congresswoman Stefanik. She has her eyes, I'm told, on the governorship. We'll see if that happens or not. I was the front runner to replace her through the last election, the favorite in the eyes of the voters. I think if she goes for that, I'll still be the front runner. And I also want to help getting more new people into politics in New York. We need to grow the parties. We need to get more new people in, people that want to win, people that want to make New York great again.
All right. Anthony Constantino from Sticker Mule. Sir, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. All right, after the break, I'll be discussing the multi-state lawsuit aimed at the DNA testing company 23andMe for the alleged selling of customers' DNA on the open market. We'll have a lot more straight ahead on America's Voice Live. Tracking your ancestry was a popular thing, kind of a trendy thing to do a couple years back. It was seen as a mostly harmless and fun thing to do, figure out where you came from, where's your family from, what do you know? Following the increased interest in tracking one's ancestral roots, sites like 23andMe came in as a means to streamline the process, make it accessible to virtually anyone. And all anybody had to do was send in a DNA sample like saliva on a swab, boom, start the process. The experts would handle the rest, right? You've seen the commercials. Well, it seems that simple process came with some caveats and a cost, such as the sharing of your data. As now 23andMe is facing a multi-state lawsuit that alleges the company broke the privacy clause and sold customers' data. The lawsuit argues that the company failed to uphold its own privacy clause and that customers, they were reasonably expected to believe that their data would never be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Hold on. We're going to Donald Trump before we do anything else here. Here's Donald Trump.
J.D. Vance and for great job, and also our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has done a fantastic job. So Rwanda, long-term war with the Congo, a very bloody war. They're all bloody, but this was a really bloody one. He's going to be making peace with Congo, and they can get on to making trade deals with the United States and other places and have a much more normal form of life. We're very honored by that. As you know, we did a very great job with India and Pakistan, and we had India in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal with India. And we had Pakistan in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal with Pakistan. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Serbia, Kosovo, likewise, they've been fighting for years. And as you know, we brought that one to a conclusion. And now we have a couple of big ones. We have Russia, Ukraine, which is making a little bit of progress. And we have Israel and nobody really knows what that one is all about. We're going to find out pretty soon, I guess.
Mr. President, the Iranian foreign minister this afternoon said if the U.S. is serious about negotiations, that you would call up Israel and request that they stop their airstrikes. Will you make that request?
Well, I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing. But we're ready, willing, and able, and we've been speaking to Iran, and we'll see what happens.
Mr. President, what was the thought process behind 2-week timetable?
Just time to see whether or not people come to their senses.
Mr. President, did the Europeans help at all in talking with the Iranians?
No, they didn't help. No. Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this one.
20 years ago, you were skeptical of a Republican administration that attacked a Middle East country on the idea of questionable intelligence of weapons of mass destruction. How is this moment different with Iran?
Well, there were no weapons of mass destruction. I never thought there were. And that was somewhat pre-nuclear. You know, there was a nuclear age, but nothing like it is today. And it looked like I'm right about the material that they've gathered already. It's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen. I was very much opposed to Iraq. I said it loud and clear, but I was a civilian, but I guess I got a lot of publicity. But I was very much opposed to the Iraq war. And I actually did say, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. But I said, if you're going to go in, keep the oil. But they didn't do that.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
Mr. President, are the Chinese in any way helping Iran at this moment? We're hearing reports of mysterious planes landing in Iran from China.
I don't know. They say that they're there to take people out, but I can't tell you about that. I get along very well with China, get along very well with President Xi. I like him. He likes me. We have a very good relationship. We'll see what happens. I can't imagine them getting involved.
Is the decision that you need to make on Iran, whether to strike militarily, is this the biggest decision you'll have to make as president?
Well, I can't tell you that. I have to see what happens. I can't, really say that. It depends what the decision is. But I wouldn't really be able to tell you that now. I'll tell you in about a year from now, maybe 5 years or 10 years from now. You never know about decisions. You never really know.
Would you support a ceasefire while the negotiations happen?
I might, depending on the circumstances.
Would you,
former Congressman Matt? It's very hard to stop. I will say this. It's very hard to stop when you look at it. Israel's doing well in terms of war, and I think you would say that Iran is doing less well. It's a little bit hard to get somebody to stop.
Liam Oscar was here. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz threw out an interesting idea suggesting that if you were to broker a deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda, and if you look at Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one too.
But what do you
They
think
won't give me a Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Would you support Iran being able to have nuclear, or would you support Iran being able to have civilian nuclear energy capabilities up to 3.76%?
You know, they're sitting on the top of one of the largest piles of oil in the world. I just don't know why they need that for civilian work. You know, it's one thing for certain countries to say, hey, I want to have a certain amount where I can go nuclear a little bit because we need it for electricity, we need it for air conditioners, etc. But when you're sitting on one of the largest oil piles anywhere in the world, it's a little bit hard to see why you need that. Yeah.
Are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even in danger talking to me right now. Do you know that? You are in danger talking to me right now. So I should probably get out of here. But you guys are actually in danger. Can you believe it?
One more. Mr. President. Is it still your expectation that NATO countries spend 5% of their GDP on defense spending?
Well, I think they should do that. I don't think we should, but I think they should. We've been supporting NATO so long. In many cases, I believe paying almost 100% the cost. So I don't think we should, but I think that the NATO countries should, absolutely.
And if a country like Spain decides not to?
Well, NATO's going to have to deal with Spain. Spain's been a very low payer. They were always a very low payer. They were either good negotiators or they weren't doing the right thing. I mean, I think Spain has to pay what everybody else has to pay. Spain has been notorious for low pay. You know who else was a low payer, just about the lowest? A place called Canada. Because Canada said, why should we pay when the United States will protect us free? And what's been right about that?
Russia, Ukraine, you've been making progress towards a peace deal. But I don't know if you know this, but Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo were there on the ground in Ukraine, seemingly doing the opposite, trying to provoke the Ukrainians to keep fighting. What do you think of that?
Well, we're going to see, and people have to be very careful with what they say. They got to be very careful with their mouth, because their mouth can get them into a lot of trouble.
One more. ICE. ICE has said that they're trying to arrest up to 3,000 individuals a day. There are some communities that are saying they are fearful of being wrongfully detained or separating some families, even if they're undocumented. Is the fear in some of these communities worth the deportations of these undocumented individuals, a mass deportation program?
It's a tough subject because, look, we have farmers. I love farmers. I won 80%, 85% of the farmers, and I love them, and I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers. And you could also say the leisure business, etc. There are some businesses where you have a disproportionate amount of people that are the people that you're talking about. At the same time, we have to get the criminals out of our country. And we're looking at doing something where, in the case of good, reputable farmers, they can take responsibility for the people that they hire and let them have responsibility, because we can't put the farms out of business. And at the same time, we don't want to hurt people that aren't criminals. Most of the people that came in over the last 3 years under Biden, I would say probably 3.5 to 4 years, those people, you have a lot of criminals, you have a lot of, I mean, we're looking at that very closely. You've had people that have worked on farms for 20 years. It's very hard to go in there and say, you know, you're coming out. But we're going to let the farmers take responsibility. They're great people. They'll do it. They know the good and the bad. So the hard part about this is not like a normal war where people wear uniforms. They don't wear uniforms. But we have murderers that came out of the last 4 years. We have murderers. We have drug lords. We have people that we don't want to. We have prisoners. They emptied out Venezuela and many countries. They emptied out their prisons into the United States. We have to get those people out. But we have stone-cold murders, 11,888 murders. We've already gotten a lot of them out of here, but we don't want them. So we have to be careful. But I never want to hurt our farmers. Our farmers are great people. They keep us happy and healthy and fat.
Are there other cities that you're going to try to replicate what you've done in Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, we had a big victory last night in the Court of Appeals with respect to Los Angeles, but really the country, where Gavin Newsom, who's really an incompetent governor, he's just doing a terrible job between his fires, between all the houses burning down, his forest fires, and now Los Angeles. If we didn't go to Los Angeles, and the sheriff admitted it, he had no control. He would have lost control. We saved Los Angeles by having the military go in. And the second night was much better. The third night was nothing much. And the fourth night, nobody bothered even coming. We put out that fire, and we did a great job of it. He sued us for going in and for helping him. We went and helped him. Right now, you'd have Los Angeles burning to the ground. Largely, it would have already been destroyed.
Do you want your legacy, Mr. President, to be that of a peacemaker? Do you worry that striking Iran would change that?
Always a peacemaker. That doesn't mean sometimes you need some toughness to make peace, but always a peacemaker.
Can you win in Iran without ground forces?
Okay.
Is an aerial campaign in Iran enough, or do you need ground forces?
Well, I'm not going to talk about ground forces. The last thing you want to do is ground forces.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time. And I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
Mr. President, do you think deportations should focus on criminals or all people who are here illegally?
start focusing on criminals, and that's what we've been focused on. Very bad criminals, dangerous criminals.
But Stephen Miller said to go out and arrest every person who's here illegally. He's told ICE to arrest everyone who's here illegally.
Stephen and I have a very good understanding. He's a terrific person. We have a great understanding.
Mr. President, if there is an attack on U.S. assets, will you promise to conduct a full investigation and make it transparent with the American people before blaming Iran for such an attack?
Well, if there's an attack, we'll know almost immediately with modern equipment who made the attack. And those people will be very, very unhappy.
Prime Minister,
I want to get you people out of danger. You're in danger standing with me.
One more. Prime Minister Netanyahu said that they had the capacity to take out all of Iran's nuclear facilities. So what role would the U.S. be able to play, and why would they, if Israel says that they have all of the abilities, their own military?
I'm not sure he said that, but they really have a very limited capacity. They can break through a little section, but they can't go down very deep. They don't have that capacity, and we'll have to see what happens. Maybe it won't be necessary. Maybe it won't be necessary.
Would you like to see Congress pass a bill that bans child transgender surgeries?
Well, I know they're talking about it, aren't they? We're going to have to see how it comes to me in what form. Certainly, it's been something I've been talking about also. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
There you have it, the president on the ground. He's on his way to Bedminster. He landed there in Morristown, New Jersey, and took questions for several minutes from a variety of reporters, focusing primarily on the conflict of Israel and Iran. What would the United States do? When would they do it? Would they get involved? Does Israel have the capability to take out the nuclear facilities in Iran? That was part of the conversation. He also pointed out that he's going to get involved in the war in the Congo in Central Africa to see if he can end that conflict. He said he's continuing to work on the Ukraine-Russia war. Says he ended the India-Pakistan conflict by intervening in laying down trade issues. So the president having quite a long conversation there with the folks. It's not clear. I thought at this point, we've talked about this, I thought at this point that we would already be involved with air strikes on Iran from the United States into those nuclear facilities. That has not happened. Wednesday of this week, all indications were that it would happen. It has not so far. He is on his way to a weekend at Bedminster, as the president will keep you up to date as things change. Now, that new administration in Washington certainly has brought a lot of positive change when it comes to fixing broken health care. But the reality is that there's only so much the government can do. And if we really want to take and make America healthy again, well, that starts with you and me and every one of us. And it also brings the wellness company in. You see and hear their doctors on this program a lot, the wellness company. You know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The wellness company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with their series of prescription medical kits that contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. Additionally, the wellness company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue to weight loss and so much more. It can help you stay healthy and live longer and, well, a more satisfying life. Make America healthy again starts at home. At home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family with the Wellness Company. It's the Wellness Company. TWC.health/voice. TWC.health/voice. Go there today and order. Save yourself some money along the way. TWC.health/voice. That promo code will save you 10%, so that's good news. We'll leave you with live pictures of Marine One as we head towards the end of the program here on America's Voice Live. Don't go anywhere. just days away now from what has been dubbed the Rio Reset, the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in, well, more than 80 years. On the 6th of July, BRICS nations, that'll be Russia, China, India, Iran, and more, expected to unveil a plan that would circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering its value. They've been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of what? Gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? Diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is, well, frankly, right now. Get a free information kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word America to 989898. July 6 marks a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text America to the number 989898 and claim your free information kit from Birch Gold right now. Meanwhile, our own David Zier was on the other end of that conversation with Donald Trump. He is on the North Lawn of the White House. David, thanks for being with us here today.
Hey, Steve. The National Security Council meeting in the Situation Room today. Trump left that meeting, walked straight to Marine One and took off for Jersey. Probably had to digest all the information. Took a lot of questions on the ground in New Jersey, but so much going on here at the White House.
Yeah, Wednesday of this week, I was pretty sure, and in fact, all my contacts in D.C. were certain that we would be in conflict directly with Iran by today, maybe tomorrow, but now it almost looks like it's been pushed back. I don't know what to believe. Donald Trump has played a pretty good, foil here as he kind of acts as a distraction. And hey, look over here. And then Israel went after Iran when it didn't look like it was going to happen the first time. He's playing this quite well. And so I would not be surprised if we bombed Iran today. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't bomb Iran at all. That's kind of where we've ended up. I don't know what to expect, David.
Yes, and that's the way Trump operates, too, right? You got to keep them on their heels. You got to be unpredictable. And, European leaders are calling for Iran, to take a deal where they promise not to enrich uranium and also cut their ballistic missile inventory, I think, by half, something the Iranians will probably never do. I don't think they're really interested. And are they just buying time by going to Geneva? We'll see if anything comes of that as well. And when it comes, we have 5 destroyers now in the Mediterranean. We had 1 earlier in the week, and we're actively involved here because we're helping intercept missiles that are going into Israel. And you would think if Iran had any intent on negotiating, they wouldn't have launched another 25 ballistic missiles or so into Israel again today. And then again tonight, there's more activity. So we'll see, right?
Yeah. But okay, so you've got the 5 American destroyers and the destroyer battle groups out there. But you've also got 2 Chinese high-tech destroyers out there that have the capability to help Iran guide those missiles into Israel. Talking to Gordon G. Chang here a short while ago, we think that might be what's happening right now. The Chinese are coordinating with the Iranians to direct attacks on Israel. I mean, this war is getting wider, it's unpredictable, and it's concerning. But if China's putting itself in and putting its fingerprint on it, that's certainly concerning, isn't it?
Well, that's concerning. And 5 flights they couldn't track, I think, disappeared coming out of China, maybe 747s. What were they bringing to them? And then there's word that the Iranians, they have a black fleet, I guess, in the Straits of Hormuz. They're jamming transponders of shipping lanes. Shipping costs are going up. Insurance, wartime insurance is increasing, and other cargo type insurances are increasing as well. And, I was just reflecting on, regime change in Iran and how that would be really difficult as well, because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, they own 50% of the petroleum and fossil fuel assets throughout the country. They also own the telecom industry.
Yeah. The devil you know, for the devil you don't. There's the real problem, and it's been going on since 1979. David, I got to leave it there. Thank you for coming to us from the North Lawn of the White House. David Zier, everybody, wrapping up our Friday edition here of America's Voice Live. Stay here with us on AVL and Real America's Voice, because we will have all the coverage. If something happens, we'll be here live to jump in and take you through everything that could happen between Israel and Iran. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm Steve Greer for Real America's Voice. See you soon.
America's Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored, and it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Getter.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Getter chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Getter friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth, and we're doing it on Getter
every single day. So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community.
Well, let's hear it. You hear that bell that will indicate it's 4 o'clock on Broad and Wall in New York, Wall Street, New York Stock Exchange closing right there. We are open for business in politics and the news. Markets look a little mixed. Very quiet trading day today, folks. Up 34 right now before the last couple of settlement seconds. It's been moving around a little bit. NASDAQ down a little bit more, 98. VIX up a little bit, a little nervousness. Gold backed off, still almost $3,400. Oil, again, really, really sticking in this mid to upper $70 area. We've been talking crypto every single day. Bitcoin this morning had jumped up to 107,000, 104,000 yesterday, up to 107, now back down to 103.3. So Bitcoin's backing off a little bit. Gold's still hanging around the $3,400 an ounce. Everyone was waiting to see what's going on with Jerome Powell and interest rates. I will tell you very quickly some of the bigger stocks that people hold. I'm an owner of Apple stock, just telling you right now. Apple, $200, up $4, bucked the trend a little bit. Tesla, almost unchanged. Tesla, $322 an ounce. And I mean, a share. Sorry about that. So we'll see what's happening. We'll see what's happening. This person, I'm so thrilled to have my next guest on this show. I absolutely adore her. She is, let me tell you something. I'm going to go out and say this. She is one of the best investigative journalists this country has ever seen or known. She has her own podcast called Going Rogue with Lara Logan. Lara, really good to have you on the show, my friend. Congratulations with the pod. Welcome to the digital world. It's where all the cool kids are hanging out these days.
Thanks for having me.
You know, Iran, Israel, Trump, U.S. involvement. Where does Lara Logan stand on all this?
Well, first of all, it's really important to me that we are always conscious of what we don't know, right? Because in these situations, there's a lot that we don't know. Secondly, I think what we're dealing with here is a real vacuum in terms of messaging. And part of the problem is that so many people are disillusioned with government. They've lost faith in the institution of government. They've lost faith in their leaders, and people just don't know what to believe. And then you have some very kind of facile conversation that's about, okay, if you take this position on Ukraine, then you have to take this position on Israel and Iran without really looking at what's at stake and what the issues are. And so, for me, being conscious of what I don't know, what I would point to, some of the more important things are understanding the strategic relationship that Israel has with the United States of America. You can disagree on, how you think the United States should act, but for these people who say that it's a one-way street, Israel has an outsized influence. They have too many lobbyists. They run the banking. They run Hollywood. They're all evil. They're all bad. This rise of anti-Semitism that you see all across, and I'm not saying if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. I'm talking about, a post that I saw where someone posted a picture of Hitler and said, "Do we owe him an apology?" The kind of rhetoric that is maybe exploiting this situation and is rising in this situation, which is all of that ignores the fact that Israel has for a very long time provided the intelligence that the United States has relied upon to keep it safe. And that means in Hamas, Hezbollah, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen or whoever it happens to be, Israel has the ability to penetrate those operations to the point, at a level that the United States does not possess. Also, if you look at it strategically, Iran, since the regime came to power in 1979, their stated goal has been the genocide of Israel and the eradication of Israel off the map. It has also been death to America. So in the current situation, Iran is backed and working with Venezuela, working with China, with the CCP, working with the Russians, working with the North Koreans. So you could, when you look at Iran strategically, the president doesn't have the luxury of saying, I like Iran, I don't like Iran. It's not about that. It's looking at who are the enemies of the United States, what is the level of the threat that they pose, how is that playing out, right, on the strategic plane, and what are our options to deal with it? Because you can't just look at Iran in isolation when all of the people, all of the countries who are in an undeclared war with the United States to some degree, less so the Russians than anybody else. I mean, Putin is Russia first, but he's also working against the globalist agenda, and the United States is working against the globalist agenda, so there's some overlap there. But when it comes to Venezuela, okay, look at the fact that Venezuela and Iran are like this. Look at the fact that when the southern border was open under Joe Biden, who came pouring across the southern border? Tren de Aragua, which was created by the leadership of Venezuela, out of the criminals, the most hardened criminals in their prisons. And who do they work alongside? Well, the IRGC, who has also infiltrated units across the southern border, according to multiple intelligence operations that I have been talking to for the last couple of years. And what have those IRGC units brought with them, which is SAM-7 missiles that have the capability of shooting down American passenger planes and so on and so on. So when you look at the immediate threat to the United States, it's not just that this conflict with Israel is about something that's happening on the other side of the world. Iran has people within the borders of the United States of America. Iran has terrorist proxies all over the world, and Iran's intercontinental ballistic missile capability is very close to reaching the eastern seaboard of the United States. So those are factors that need to be considered when you try to evaluate where you stand on this and whether or not you can believe your leaders. One of the issues here that I think is not helping President Trump very much is the fact that he doesn't have a real national security advisor. Ever since he got rid of Mike Waltz, he's had Marco Rubio fulfilling both roles, and that obviously policy is not working out because he doesn't have a real national security advisor with a real communication strategy who is communicating to the people of this country why this isn't just a simple case of believe that Iran is trying to get a nuclear bomb or don't believe Iran is trying to get a nuclear bomb. And, Eric, I want to give you a chance to weigh in there. There's a lot more that I can say on this, but,
what I would like to ask, and you and I come from a very similar place, I believe. If we don't have to get involved in any foreign wars, the country's going to be better off. I hate sending our young folks into foreign wars that, frankly, are helping people who hate us anyway. Here's the question, though. In order to do what you just said, make the world safer for everyone, don't you need regime change? Don't you need to replace the mullahs and the clerics, get rid of them, and bringing a new, I would call it almost a democracy-type government in there? And that they're not going to go down without swinging, these mullahs. They want to retain power. So how do you do it?
Well, anyone who's been to war, and as you know, I spent many, many years on battlefields from Africa all the way to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I would agree with you. If you can avoid a war, then you absolutely want to do that. No doubt about it. One of the things that makes me really upset is knowing now that we never used more than 10% of our advanced military capability on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan. So when I was, 4.5 months pregnant, walking through minefields in Helmand Province, and seeing Marines and U.S. soldiers getting hurt on the battlefield, most of the time that didn't need to happen. The United States could have ended those wars in a very different way very quickly, and we didn't do that. So I'm with you. Anyone who's dragging out a war and who's sending people to die for no reason, and the longer these wars drag on, the more civilians get killed. So none of that needs to happen. However, at the same time, the idea that, well, you can just abdicate, and do nothing or use diplomacy and that's going to work. I mean, look at what the Obama administration did. They used diplomacy, right? And sent hundreds of millions of dollars to Iran, which they used to further their terrorist agenda and their political agenda worldwide. So that is in part what led us to the current situation. So that is a major issue. And then, of course, there's the fact that the Iranian people have been tortured and murdered and oppressed by this regime for decades. Okay, and their voice has been smothered. And I've been talking to members of the Iranian opposition for many, many years now. I used to go and meet with them in Diyala province, north of Baghdad, or meet with some of the people who were allowed out in Baghdad itself when I was living in Iraq for 5 years. And I have followed what has happened to them. And over again, every time the people have risen up, the regime has come in and absolutely slaughtered anyone standing in their way. Let's not forget that, young girls, young boys, if they speak out in public, they disappear and you have no rights, and their families often just get the body back. Or Iran executes people in staggering numbers, every single year, and nobody says a word. So I agree with you that if you really want if the mullahs in Iran, this regime is never, ever, ever going to just step aside or step down because their people rise up in a political capacity and put pressure on them. And, the regime says, okay, we're going to give up power. They're not going to give up power, and they're not going to give up without a fight.
Laura, let me, if I may just jump in real quick, about 2 minutes left on this. Okay. There's a divide within the right, within MAGA. Some say go, do what it takes. Trump, press the button, go, whatever. Actually calling for some things that I'm shocked to even say, possibly even nuclear, bunker busters, et cetera. Others are saying don't do it. You start something, this could be the beginning of World War III. MAGA is split on this. What is your message to the folks who all want the same thing, a safer country, a safer globe?
Well, war is messy and it's brutal, and too often, too many innocent people die. However, this idea that if you want peace through strength, well, strength has to be real. People have to know that you mean what it is you're going to say. And look how the United States has already benefited from this. Hamas has been decimated by Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon, another Iranian terrorist proxy, has been decimated by Israel. And all of this has happened without the United States having to put a single soldier forward on the front line of battle. So that strategic relationship, Israel takes a lot of the heat, and they take, a pounding. And what really bothers me, Eric, is the rise that I see of this anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish rhetoric. Every state has good and bad within it. The United States, if you're dealing with the Biden regime, you're dealing with one set of Americans. You deal with the Trump regime, you've got a completely different set. Okay, so one is a globalist regime and the other is not.
I have to ask you, you by definition said you have friends and sources and have been contacting the resistance in Iran, the people who are pushing back on the mullahs and the clerics. This money that Barack Obama sent, $150 billion in his term, and more recently, the $6 billion that Biden sent a couple of months before October 7th, by the way, what did the folks who are trying to be the resistance, what do they say to America and to you when they hear things like that?
They're desperate for help. They're desperate for the United States and the world to pay attention to what they've been trying to do for decades. I have seen a book that the Iranian opposition has made with it's listing the names of people that have been murdered by the regime over the last few decades. Many of the young people on the streets of Iran today, if you're wondering why they're risking their lives like this, it's because their mother or father or grandparents were among those who've been murdered by this regime. And I'm not just talking about now. I'm talking about every time they have risen up, every time they have seemed close to toppling the regime, the world has looked the other way as Iran has gone door to door, street by street, just absolutely obliterating anyone that stands in their path. And so these people are desperate for help. They're desperate for the world to listen to them. I mean, look at there's many Iranians in the diaspora who talk about why they had to flee their country. And I'm not glossing over the role of the United States and what led to that and the history there. But the reality is that these people know if there is not some kind of external force or external pressure on the regime, that they're just going to be murdered because nobody cares when they are.
External, you mean beyond Israel, which would kind of put us right in the. We're next behind them, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be beyond Israel. Maybe Israel's enough. And maybe, I don't know. I don't have hard facts on this, but, Israel takes a lot of the blame. And there's a lot of people supporting Israel. For example, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, right? There's not just the United States that wants to see regime change in Iran.
Right.
And,
but we happen to be the ones who are supplying all the arms and the assets and likely the intelligence that keeps those folks safe within their own backyards. Laura, I got to go. I really.
You can bet that the Islamic countries are providing Israel with intelligence too. You can absolutely bet that it's not just the United States.
Good. I'm waiting for some of these, generals in Iran to be popping up in Israel somewhere with a nice little setup, and hopefully they were turning over their intel of what they knew. So, Laura, we got to go. I love having you on. Love to get you back again real soon. Good friend of mine, Laura Logan, everyone. It's called Going Rogue with Laura Logan. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Take care.
All righty. She's great. One of the best journalists ever. All right, folks, new administration in Washington, D.C. has brought a lot of positive changes when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The reality is, however, that there's only so much the government can do, and that if we really want to make America healthy again, that starts at home with each and every one of us. And that's where the Wellness Company comes in. See and hear from TWC doctors on this network all the time, and you know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you're prepared for whatever happens with their series of prescription medical kits that contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to weight loss and so much more. They can help you stay healthy and live a longer and more satisfying life. Make America healthy again starts at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to www.twc.health/voice today and order. That's twc.health/voice. Use the promo code VOICE. Save $10. We shall be right back. Hey, we got some voicemails at the end of the show. Stick around. You guys tell me exactly what you think of me, the show, and what's going on in the world. Be right back. What a great show. I love this show. I have my good friend Lara Logan, and then followed up with another one of my very, very good friends. My next guest was appointed by President Trump as a senior advisor to the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Always happy to bring back Carrie Lake. We love our Carrie Lake. Carrie, really good to have you. So now you tell us you found some waste, fraud, and abuse at U.S. AGM. Tell us about that, please.
Well, you don't have to walk far in Washington, D.C. I mean, you can close your eyes and bump into waste, fraud, and abuse. It's around every corner, in every building, in every agency. I happen to be overseeing one of the most corrupt agencies. It's a small agency that many people have never heard of, U.S. Agency for Global Media. They have maybe heard of some of its outlets, Office of Cuba Broadcasting, Voice of America, and they've got grantees, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle East Broadcasting Network, OTF. Lots of different areas where American taxpayer dollars are flowing in and we're not getting something worthwhile out, or it's flowing into the pockets of people who shouldn't be taking that money. And so we've been uncovering a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, but more importantly, we've been here effectuating President Trump's March 14th executive order to shrink down the bureaucracy of the federal government. And one of the agencies, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the one that I oversee, he asked in that executive order for us to shrink it down to its minimum size allowable by law. It's called the statutory minimum. And I have been working diligently to make that happen since March 14, even though we've had numerous lawsuits lodged against us. We're still working hard. And today we announced massive terminations of the workforce. I am happy to report that we have successfully cut the workforce by 85% in this agency today, issuing RIF notices, as they're called, reduction in force notices, to roughly about 640 folks. And earlier we had announced, terminations of many other folks who work at this agency. And I'll be honest, there's some really good people who work at this agency. Unfortunately, the agency's been run in such a corrupt manner that it's made it impossible to salvage the agency. And that's why President Trump wants this agency to be deleted. I think there's a way to take some of the assets that are strong and good and find a new home for them. But as it is right now, this is rotten to the core, and it cannot be salvaged in its current form.
It's fascinating, and I'm not sure everyone really understands the role of the whole the umbrella company, but also the group or the Voice of America. Like it's really intended to promote capitalism and democracy around the world. I would almost call it quasi-propaganda, but so what? There's so much negative propaganda coming up to us. And the point I'm trying to make is you walked in there and there was massively staffed with liberals where their voice was representing America from a very, very liberal perspective, right?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned what the focus of this agency is. It is to tell America's story abroad to the world. And as I said, the American taxpayers pay for this. And so the product that should be going out to the world should be talking about the amazing, amazing country that we live in. And it should be aligned with what our foreign policy is. But in many cases, it hasn't done that over the years. As a matter of fact, there's instances where we've put out anti-American programming, where we put out programming that has bolstered our adversaries, where we've, believe it or not, hired people who are foreign asset spies. It's really
can we stop there?
Happened over the years.
You came in, and not only do they lean severely left at the time, they're actually foreign assets that were being paid by American taxpayers to put out anti-American propaganda with our own radio waves.
Yeah, very, very shoddy history of doing background checks on the people that have been hired. And in many cases, they have created a national security risk for our entire country. I plan to go into great detail about this on Wednesday when I appear before the House Foreign Affairs Committee to talk about the spies, the lies, the mismanagement of this agency. It's shocking the risk they have put our country in by their background checks that, even though they were warned, they weren't doing them properly. They weren't vetting people properly. Now, this agency hires an exorbitant number of foreign nationals from countries that are hostile toward America. So it's really imperative that background checks are done in accordance with the law and in accordance with what law enforcement and intelligence says we need to do. And that wasn't done for a decade or more at this agency, opening us up to potentially hundreds or more spies coming into our country. And I'm going to go into that on Wednesday morning when I appear before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. This agency is rotten. It's a tangled mess. And to be honest, there's no way to salvage it in its current form. And I think that's why President Trump understood that and asked for us to bring it down to its statutory minimum. Whatever the applicable law requires, we boil it down to that. And then let's work to find if there is something salvageable, find a home for that.
Restaff this thing, Carrie. I mean, it's so important to get the right tone, the right voice on the Voice of America and the various other entities, the way you push out the American dream and ideals to the rest of the world, make democracy front and center on all of it. Yeah, we need that. But that voice is very, very powerful. There's people who listen to that. Yeah, go ahead. Final thought, if you don't mind.
I should clarify something, though. President Trump initially had wanted me to be the director of Voice of America. And we learned that this agency had been Trump-proofed. I mean, they made it impossible for me to get into that position where I could go in and try to turn Voice of America around. That's a job that you do have control editorially over what's being put out. Unfortunately, it would take 7 people being confirmed by the Senate for me to get into that role. And so the administration instead made me the senior advisor. So in my role as senior advisor, I don't have a say over what they put out editorially. But here's something really sad. Very few people do. This is an agency that thinks they're independent, that thinks they can run on their programming anything they want. So if they put something out that's anti-American, if they put something out that supports a dangerous regime, there's nothing that I can do. I can't pick up the phone call and the phone and tell them don't do that, or they can sue me for firewall infringement. This is how backwards the agency is. Even if they put something out that was damaging to our foreign policy, Secretary Rubio couldn't pick up the phone and call Voice of America and say, please knock it off, you're hurting us. That's crazy. That's how backwards this agency is.
Imagine, I mean,
that's
you
why
literally
it's rotten, and that's why it needs to be reworked.
On broadcast media, and cable, not necessarily digital, but on cable, you literally have to be careful of every word that comes out of your mouth, because the various bodies that listen to everything that's being said on our airways may come down and fine you or bounce you off TV. But we could actually have a liberal propagandist putting out negative stuff about America, and there's nothing that the Secretary of State could do about it. This is crazy.
Yeah, and they have a firewall protection where they could sue anybody who tries to say, hey, don't do that. I mean, they could go full on, totally rogue, anti-American, and it would be next to impossible for me, the president, anybody, a congressman, a senator.
When bad people take over countries and they just go in, number one, they take over the military. And then the next thing they do, they get to the media. They get right to those towers that are putting out the various propaganda and the points of view. So very, very important. Kerry, love to get you back very, very soon. Thank you for saving American taxpayers a heck of a lot of money. Thank you, Kerry Lake.
That's right. They're spending a lot of money on this agency. Thank you, Eric.
All right, folks, we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. All right, folks, let's bring in our RAV reporter, border reporter correspondent, who's been following two big stories in Tijuana, Mexico. Happy to have Oscar El Blue Ramirez back with us. Oscar, you've been a very, very busy man. In Tijuana, tunnel has been found American authorities. I've been in these tunnels, Oscar. There's so many of these tunnels. It's just fascinating how they trick these things out, sometimes with lights. They have to have fans, make sure they get oxygen through them. Tell us the story of what you found. And I think we're going to roll some of the stuff some of the video that you took in pictures. Go ahead.
Yeah, this tunnel, Eric, thank you for the invitation. And before we go on, Baja California, it is the state with more tunnels in the country that, underneath the wall to cross illegally to the United States of America, substances, illegal substances, and narcotics. But this tunnel was found just a couple of days ago, more than 700 meters underneath. But it was discovered. The curious thing about it, and is the most important thing, Eric, it was discovered first by the American authorities in a warehouse outside, crossing the border underneath the wall in Otay Mesa and in the United States territory. Then the American authorities alarmed the Mexican authorities to go particularly to this particular address. And then it was discovered it was a 2-story home that they had this narco tunnel that basically goes underneath the wall and crosses and goes directly into a warehouse in the United States of America. This will be number 18, tunnel number 18 in the state of Baja that has been discovered by Mexican authorities, also, cooperating with American authorities. Eric.
It's interesting. And again, I spent some time at the border, and that was... it's not even that far. All right, so these tunnels, here's the border wall. Here's the border wall. It just goes, east-west. These tunnels sometimes they start maybe 100 yards into Mexico and end in a warehouse, maybe only another 100 or 200 yards in the American side of the border, and they're very well hidden. And they're usually around areas where there's a lot of commerce, so you don't see a lot of things coming and going specifically. Is that what you found here as well, Oscar?
Yes, and this one was really close to the pedestrian crossing to the United States of America and the Otay Mesa vehicle port of entry, the Sentry Line. So it's just incredible how the cartel has the ability and the freedom to make these tunnels into these houses. Also, not too long ago, around a year ago, another tunnel was discovered next to the National Guard headquarters, also close to Otay Mesa. So it tells you the level of capacity and the level of power that the cartel has due to the corruption, Eric, we have to say it, and the Mexican authorities.
Oscar, tell us about this guy, this bad guy, he's a drug lord, Edwin Huerta Nuño. He's called El Flaquito, the leader of the cartel. Tell us about what happened this week.
Got captured. Yesterday, got captured was big news, national news in our country of Mexico. Better known, El Flaquito has been operating, and he has been the leader of the Cartel Arellano Felix, a well-known cartel in the state of Baja, extremely violent individual, really violent individual. A lot of the fentanyl crossings through this particular area, they're directed to his operation. This is his home that it was discovered. Immediately, it was raided, and immediately he was stopped and detained. And now he is in detention over there in the city of Mexico. They transported him in the military air force that is called Hercules. Right now there's speculation, it is strong, Eric, that they're waiting for American authorities to see if they're going to extradite him into the United States of America. They're most likely the United States government is going to ask the Mexican government to extradite him into American territory.
And that's because what happened with El Chapo, if he's incarcerated in Mexico, they tend to get out.
Yeah, the majority. And yes, and because of the level of trafficking that, a lot of the people have pointed it upon, he has been in charge of the enormous quantities of fentanyl, also enormous quantities of cocaine, and also a lot of murders that they have been happening, dismembered bodies. A lot of this activity, it is directed to his activity. One of the curious things, Eric, that neighbors were saying, it is that this particular house was guarded and safeguarded by government officials of Mexico. So it tells you the level of corruption, that he was well protected by corrupt officials in Mexico, which they were the ones that they were protecting this drug lord.
Oscar, final thought. Trump administration came out and said there were exactly 0 illegals allowed to stay in the United States. 0 in the month of May. This year, last year, 61,000 that were allowed to stay. Is the U.S. military assisting? And if not, do we need them to assist if they're literally clamping down, closing the border?
Yes, absolutely. Closing down CBP-1, also Border Patrol agents where they were open border gaps. And now they force the Mexican government to put the National Guard over these open border gaps, also hurting the cartel in their pockets because drug trafficking and also human trafficking was at an all-time high. Child trafficking was an all-time high. Exploitation of people through this particular area. Now it has cracked down, and that has pivoted the cartel to this level of violence. Yes, absolutely. Trump policies work, and it is showing right now. It has decreased, almost to 100% of the enormous trafficking rings that they were operating on the other side of the border. Eric.
Crazy. Oscar, really stay safe, my friend. You told me you're headed to Israel possibly in the next couple of weeks or so. You put yourself in harm's way, my friend, for our audience, but you bring great information for us. Thank you, Oscar El Blue Ramirez. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much, Eric.
All right, folks, think about it. Every dollar you spend is either supporting your values or working against them. In today's economy, where you spend your money matters. That's how we take back our country. Patriot Mobile is leading the way as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. Switch today without sacrificing quality or service. You'll get exceptional nationwide coverage because unlike most budget wireless providers, Patriot Mobile has access to all 3 major U.S. cell tower networks. You can even add 2 numbers on 2 networks on 1 phone, something the big guys can't even do. Stay connected with flexible, unlimited data plans to fit your lifestyle. These plans offer high-speed data, mobile hotspots, international roaming, device protection, and even internet backup. Here's the best part. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're supporting faith, family, and freedom. If you believe in our First and Second Amendments and our rights, therefore, the sanctity of life, and supporting our veterans, this is where you belong. Switching is simple. Keep your number, keep your phone, or switch them out. Upgrade. Patriot Mobile's 100% U.S.-based team will get you activated in minutes. Right now, go to patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT. 972-PATRIOT to get a free month of service with promo code RAV. Make the switch. Defend freedom with every single call and text. That's patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT. Hey, before we head to break, just want to remind you about the podcast YouTube page, both updated daily. You can hear the show, tons of the content anywhere, anyway. Be sure to subscribe right now. Don't miss out. Call my voicemail line, too. Tell me what you think of the president. Tell me anything what we're doing here. We're going to play some of yours in the next segment. You might end up on TV. We'll be right back. Good news, an appeals court just handed President Trump a major win over pretty boy Gavin Newsom. President Trump is allowed to keep control of all National Guard troops deployed in Los Angeles, and the monsters on MSNBC, well, they just can't believe it.
This decision, in essence, gives Trump the green light to use the National Guard in other states. And the administration has been hinting very publicly that they're going to go into New York City, Chicago, maybe some other states, all happen to be blue. What is the mood like, Elizabeth, that you sense from talking to lawmakers, state officials, about where this goes from here now that the president does have the legal green light to use the National Guard?
I can tell you that in New York City, if he deploys the National Guard in New York, it'll cause it's going to cause a giant outrage and create probably more violence than there would be anyway.
Isn't that what he wants?
Well, that's of course one of the working theories, that he wants to create this all over the country and then
So a little correction to I guess it was the host, Sam Stein, who I think he runs Daily Beast also, or one of those liberal publications. No, the common denominator is not necessarily that all those cities were blue. It's that all those cities were sanctuary cities who decided to go against federal law and protect illegals, which Trump said was going to be illegal. And by the way, he got that. The judge just said, we'll handle it. You won't handle it, Newsom. You won't handle it, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, or Eric, whatever the hell your name is in New York. Trump will do it. Feds will do it. Jazzy Jasmine Crockett, couldn't go a week, right? Jazzy Jasmine Crockett thinks that Trump supporters are sick, and she's not afraid to say it to anyone. Here's America's dumbest and least filtered Congresswoman running her mouth about Republicans yet again.
This idea that we don't care how many people get hurt, we don't care how we prostitute our service members, thinking that you have your own special little army that's for you. I mean, it is sick. It is really sick. And anybody that supports it is also sick. And so, we've got a mental health crisis in this country, because everyone, no matter how you affiliate yourself, should be against Trump. Period. This is not partisan for me. Like, I would give anything to have, it's sad to say, George Bush. Give me any regular Republican
I can't
nowadays.
take it anymore. I can't. My ears started to bleed. Jazzy Jasmine Crockett was talking such garbage. No. We're not sick because we disagree with you. We're Americans. We have the right to agree or disagree with anyone. We have a First Amendment right to say it. And by the way, we don't agree with wide open borders, increased crime in our cities, protecting illegals who come over, break the law, and really kind of blaming the people who are the victims of these people. You can't blame them and shame them. You're wrong. We're not sick because we have a different. By the way, we're about 65% of the country right now who agree with what Donald Trump is doing on immigration. Keep going, Jazzy Jasmine. Keep digging. As they say, person digging their own grave, let them keep digging. Caroline Leavitt responded. By the way, that was a metaphor for her political career, not her life. Anyway, Caroline Leavitt responded to Crockett's latest attacks. Listen to what Caroline Leavitt had to say.
Here on our homeland as well.
Thank you. And then really quick on Jasmine Crockett, she said, I believe, that Trump supporters are mentally ill before calling for bipartisan support against the president. Can you respond to that, especially considering she's a rising star in the Democrat Party right now?
She is a rising star. It's quite something to behold, actually. I hope that she continues to be a rising star for the Republican Party, at least. I think it's incredibly derogatory to accuse nearly 80 million Americans of mental illness.
I agree wholeheartedly. Caroline Leavitt said, you know what, let her be the rising star of the party. She's speaking for literally like 15% of the country. Crockett's stupidity knew no bounds yesterday. She continues to do race bait virtually every time someone gives her a platform, and still she thinks that Kamala Harris was the right choice for America this past November. Listen to this.
Because when you think about it, Kamala Harris, light years ahead of Donald Trump as it relates to qualifications, as it relates to her overall resume, and as it relates to the fact that she was a lot younger. Everybody said that they wanted to get rid of Joe Biden because he was too old. Then you had a younger, qualified, non-felon candidate, and somehow the people still chose the old white man. So, for me, I don't think it was ever about that.
Nothing to do with the race, Jazz. You got to understand this. You guys are playing the race card. It didn't work. You guys got smoked on this. Had nothing to do. Electing Donald Trump had nothing to do with him being white or old. It had everything to do with Joe Biden being completely demented. He lost his complete mind during his presidency. And the only logical replacement at the time, because they let him run, they should have bounced him before that, was Kamala Harris. The minute she couldn't answer the question, how are you going to combat or try and bring inflation down, everyone realized she had nothing here. It was an airball here. And all of a sudden the world, and especially the liberal left, said, wait a minute, we're going to back her for president? This is going to be worse than the Biden 4 years. And that's why it had nothing to do with anyone's race, Jazzy Jasmine, but keep playing the race card. Keep playing the race card. Didn't work in 24, ain't going to work in 26 or 28. Barack Obama pushing for more censorship on the internet. Actually, he's calling for governments to step in and, I don't know, censor us on social media. Listen to this really scary suggestion.
But part of what we're going to have to do is to start experimenting with new forms of journalism and how do we use social media in ways that reaffirm facts, separate facts from opinion. We want diversity of opinion. We don't want diversity of fact. By the way, it will require some government, I believe, regulatory constraints around some of these business models.
So they're back to this. You remember Biden and Kamala Harris tried to have a disinformation board where it's going to be all liberals on this board and decided what was real information, real news, real information, and what was fake. And they were going to decide. And the people who were caught putting out fake news were, I don't know, going to get censored, canceled, imprisoned. Obama's calling for the same thing. Let me guess, you're going to want your liberal friends on that board who decides what's right and what's wrong, right? Barack. Hakeem Jeffries still letting Trump's spending bill keep him up at night. He refuses to move on and still thinks there's something he can do to stop it. He is so vastly wrong.
And the proposed cuts to Medicaid, the largest cuts being proposed to Medicaid in American history, are unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American, and together we're going to do everything we can to stop
All right,
them.
I want to do one more. Hakeem's nut. I want to do one more. James Carville, mind you, this guy was one of the smartest political minds in the business. He got Bill Clinton elected. He came up with the slogan, "It's the economy, stupid." It got Bill Clinton elected. Watch what I think James Carville is really I think he's lost his mind too. Watch.
And don't worry about having a panel discussion about the Democrats. What are they going to do? Look at what's right in front of you. What's right in front of you. And I think there is sufficient reason to marshal resources and together to see what the hell's going on here, which may be even caused by underlying, what do you call it, syphilitic? I don't know what the medical word for it is. In other words, he may have the clot. And I think this is, because, and we had the No Kings, which is the largest thing. And, maybe we should have no syphilis rallies.
Well, James Carville, I think it's time you hang up the cleats, my friend. All right, before we head to break, take a look at this new episode of a show I do. It's called On the Ground. It's only on X. It's only on Twitter. It's a phenomenal show. I would just love you to go to my Twitter account to find it. But here's a little taste of it. Watch. On the ground, no kings. Across America, the streets are filling. Anger, noise, flags, fury, fire. And we were there on the ground in New York and Washington, D.C., and across the nation, a divide widens. First came the anti-Trump crowds, marching, chanting, demanding accountability. Then came the Trump loyalists, fighting back with fire and fury of their own. Two sides, one country. No middle ground left to speak of. No hosts, no spin, no filters, just the raw sound of a nation tearing at the seams. This is No Kings. This is On the Ground. You know, it's my favorite time of the show, right? Okay, so I'm smiling because I know Bannon's coming up. He's coming on right now. So let me set this up. Yesterday, I'm coming to work and I'm listening to Fox on the radio, and I hear John Roberts interviewing Trey Gowdy. And Trey Gowdy was saying some really nasty stuff about Steve and Tucker and us on the MAGA right. And I got to where get Steve get Steve in the seat.
Hang on for a second. Hang on. I'm trying to cure you of all this. This is why we got you here at RAV. You're coming
I don't
into
get Rav in the car.
You're coming into Fox. It's just so hard. Okay. It's like a girlfriend, dude. She's not that into you. Okay, why do you keep listening? Bolling, what are you doing to me? You're my rock, dude. You're the pirate. What's the pirate?
I got to know what the opposition is saying.
And you're daydreaming.
You're gonna love this,
daydreaming. Hey,
you are going to love this.
I can be something for. I can sub for Bill. I can sub for Bill O'Reilly. I can sub for Bill O'Reilly.
Just listen to this. You're not going to believe it. So I was hoping Bannon was going to come on yesterday. He was too busy with his other friends, not this friend. Even though the toss is go on the Getter and the Rumble chat. The toss is their favorite part. Too busy with his other boyfriends, and so I played it anyway. And I had a little thing to say about it. And then what happens after is really amazing. So go ahead, Mad Dog. All right, very quickly, I got to get to this. I was listening to Fox, and it pissed me off beyond belief. This guy, Trey Gowdy, don't like him. And he took a shot at our friend Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, but Steve Bannon, listen.
He is MAGA. He is America first. So when you are that, you get to define what that means. And again, I keep coming back to the point that there's several critics, too. One used to be on television, I think. The other used to be in prison, I think. Those are the two main critics. Together, they have received 0 electoral votes for president. Neither one of them has the guts to run. So either run for president to be the commander-in-chief or critique in private, or better yet, shut up.
And just to answer your question on why don't they critique him in private, I would posit that then they'll miss all that attention on social media for doing it publicly.
No, you're so cynical, John. When'd you get so cynical?
Hey, Trey Gowdy, Steve Bannon has more guts in his little finger than you got in your body. And Tucker Carlson, love him or hate him, doesn't matter. He's done more. He's accomplished more than you ever will. Trey, time for you.
Hold it. I got to give a Trey Gowdy story.
Before you weigh in on that, I just want to tell you what happened. So I put that up on Twitter and social media everywhere. Yep. And I get this email right here into my inbox from John Roberts, the host. He's like, tell me what I said that wasn't true. Go ahead, Mad Dog, the next one. So I text him, I email him back. And I say, hey, John, if you listen to my comment, it called you out for piling on Tucker and Bannon after Trey Gowdy delivered a few low blow and unfunny insults. I guess I expected more from you, John. You look like a couple of high school mean girls. There's tens of millions of followers, including the President of the United States, who are sick and tired of legacy media types trashing our MAGA voices. Best ETB. And then he comes back with this one. This is one you're going to love. Who are you calling legacy media? You and I used to be friends. I certainly didn't abandon those sentiments. And if Bannon, Tucker, et al. Really wanted to deliver a message to POTUS about their concerns, they would do it in private. But publicity is really their coin of the realm. You can't monetize a privite meeting. And I think the irony of that is that where were you yesterday?
Yeah, I spent John Roberts shows. John, this is what a clown you are. With all the years you spent, you're still doing afternoon television for Fox. Look, John Roberts, as it was reported yesterday, I was at the White House for 3 hours, just as a reported 3 hours. Tucker and I do critique this with the president at a time and place of our choosing when it works for the president. Okay, something more than you do, sir, because you're just a news reader. And this is about John Roberts. As I've recommended, they ought to have a full, fair investigation into the network that you draw a dollar from. Because anybody that took first off, are you working for a foreign government or not? Is your network working for a foreign government? And John Roberts, let me be specific. You took paychecks from Murdoch in 21. So don't sit there and tell me how MAGA you are. Anybody took paychecks from in 21, we know exactly how they tried to bury Trump. And I would say 22 also. For Trey Gowdy, I'll give you an anecdote about Trey Gowdy. I'm sitting there getting crucified by Shifty Shift and in Swalwell. in the House Intelligence Committee, I don't know, for 25 or 30 hours. And I have two of the best lawyers in the country, Bill Burke, who is now on the board at Fox News, and Alex Spiro, who's famous for being also Elon Musk's lawyer. He's also my lawyer, being grilled. And the Speaker of the House that, punched out on Trump had made Devin Nunes give up his, because we were the majority. We controlled the House Intelligence Committee, made him step down, and Trey Gowdy took over. And my two lawyers said Trey Gowdy was worse going after Trump.
Yeah.
Right? And the Russia thing in the skiff than Shifty Shift and thing. Trey Gowdy's never answered the question, Trey, why did you drop out of Congress so quickly? Why did you drop out of Congress so quickly? You didn't get a federal judgeship. You didn't go to a white shoe law firm. Curious minds want to know. I know what the rumors say, but people like to know why you dropped out of Congress so quickly. I don't know. I don't want to go there.
But I will tell you, Trey,
I don't want traffic. I don't want traffic in those types of sordid tales.
That's right. Trey Gowdy's a guy who also said he believes